Good evening and welcome back to my channel. So the last video got me to a certain point, got the cockpit and the nose piece done, and so now it's time to work on the basically rest of the fuselage and the assembly of the main chunk of the aircraft. So instead of waffling on about, let's just go ahead and crack right in. All right, so next step here is put together the swing wing mechanism. And as I've said before, when I did the 1/32 scale, it was just horrendous. Doing this assembly was horrendous. And the real frustrating part was it was essentially 1970s, 1980s engineering. This is not. This part actually goes together really nicely. Pay attention to the orientation of your swing wing teeth, and then the hardware is specific. They tell you that you want the 6mm ones for this, you want the 8mm ones for that, you want the 4mm for that, and they go in well. You don't have to crank them down. With the 32nd scale, you really had to be a little bit forceful. With this one, you don't. And they sit where they're supposed to go, which is really nice. And they don't really jump or bounce around. And then this piece right here that overlays and holds these things down, again, it goes in. The screws are a little snug, but you get them in and they go in well. It really is nice to do. So I'm much happier with the way this part. Once you do that, then you go do and you put all the rest of the pieces in. So like this is the top pieces for the intakes, right? You go through, follow the instructions. I end up using the Sharpie so that I can figure out, these are sided, they're handed. So find out which one's which and make sure I get the right ones in the right spot. Then after that, it's putting the bottom piece on. Now, the sprue there in the middle, it's difficult to cut that out. You have to be careful not to break those little fine pieces in the center part of the fuselage. Then go back, drill the holes for the ordnance, that kind of thing. Then finish putting together the other pieces that go in together. It's really not that difficult. Have them ready, and then it all kind of really slots together nicely. I'm really kind of content with this. Okay, so I'm now at a decision point on. This is where I leave some of the instructions behind. And I realize I probably should have gotten here to the decision point before then. So we've got this part done, which is really nice. And, Becca, you're right. This went together a dream. This really goes together well. Seams are well thought out, all of that, right? So I'm really enjoying how this kit's going together and what the opportunities are with it. But, and this is where I'm running into a couple of challenges. So this part of the aircraft, right? So when you're doing K9, K8, these pieces here, all this assembly goes in, you put this on, and it dawned on me about a day after I put them on that now I'm going to have to mask them. So I do a lot of pre-painting and so forth. So I've gotten to the point where I've gotten actually to step 20 here where we put the wings together. So I did that. And again, they go together very well. If you clean up your sprue gates, they drop on really nicely. And as I start to think about whether or not I want to put those wings in place before I paint, I'm thinking I don't. I think I want to do those later. But I'm starting to look at the landing gear, dropping the landing gear in place, putting the pieces and parts together. Now, the color scheme I'm looking at, or the camo scheme I'm looking at, is basically, a whitish bottom with the gray top, and then a different colored nose. Actually, here it is, right? So, what? Oh, come on. There we go, right? So, you see that white at the bottom, gray on the top. My intent is, we'll do the tail, put the tail on after I've painted it so that I can, make the painting easier, right? So I can do that. Then I start looking at this. I'm like, the painting and the way I painted it I need to make that gray. So what I probably should have done is put those on after I've painted the aircraft, but I didn't. So now what I'm going to do is go through and mask off the silver paint that I've done. Later I'll go back with some AK real metal and wipe those down. So now I'm looking at like doing the landing gear, getting those in place, and I feel like, yeah, I can do them, but maybe I won't. How about I go ahead and I put them together, paint them and assemble them off the aircraft. I know, Becker, you hate, this would be a non-issue for wheels up, but I like wheels down. So doing all this and getting that red edge, so I'm thinking I do all this, put it all together, then I go back and do the detail painting, then drop the landing gear in. I think that's what I'm going to do. I can still assemble them in the same order, but I don't actually put them on the aircraft. The other thing I need to figure out, which requires a little bit of research that between Yinzal and the wall, I really don't want to do. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick something that looks cool. I'm going to go with that. So you F-14 experts who are very aware of what the right loadout and so forth is for the VF-84 that I'm going to do, I apologize. I probably am going to mess that up, but it's a matter of what looks cool. I'm going with the rule of look cool for me. And yeah, you guys get the idea. But I'm really close to where it's just time to start painting. So I'm going to skip the ordnance. I'm going to go ahead and put the aircraft together. I'm going to basically skip from here, from 29. And I think I'm going to leave them off too, because they just slide on. Those where the polycaps went, so they're just going to slide on. I'll get to 29, skip from 29 to 36. Put the upper tails together, leave them off so I can paint them, then finish the cockpit, right? I will not do with pilots. Come over here, get all this put on, get all these things put on, then drop in the canopy, then paint, right? So I'll do all this, get all these in, then paint, then come back, put the landing gear on, and then do the ordnance. So that's what I think I'm looking at, because I feel like I can paint these ordnance rails. Well, I'm thinking these guys can just go on. I can just put those guys on. I'm not going to put those on. I already know I'm not going to do that. So, yeah, that's what I think I'm looking at here. Well, maybe I am. No, I'm looking at that picture. So, yeah. Anyway, this is where I am. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to the next step. Like I said, these go together well. I did label them left and right. So this is the left, so that it'll just slide, and those slide into there. I really like the way that all goes together. This mechanism is nice and smooth. So when I go to paint, I'll mask this off and move on. So let's go ahead and get cracked into that part. All right, so with that, I'm going to call this video done. I know it's not super long and probably wasn't too awful informative, but basically putting the body together and going through that is really what I needed to get done. Next step is going to be finishing up a few of the detail pieces, and then I'm going to move on to the painting, which for me is going to be a little bit, I don't want to say problematic, but it's requiring thought. And that's something that I've discovered with this kit, is thinking through how I want to paint it. Aircraft are kind of interesting in that you need to be careful about how you want to do it, especially because the way I do things, I build them with landing gear down. I have to take that into account. There's going to be open landing gear bays, and there's things that can break. So I need to be careful with that. So that's going to be the next video, is the painting and that part of it. This overall assembly is going well. The way it goes together, though, really lends to a need to think. So doing that, have to really think through how does it all go together, and then is it together in the right sub-assembly so that I can paint them, so I can move on to the next piece, the next, logical phase of the assembly. But overall, this is being entertaining. So I hope this video is useful, informative, or however. Anybody, again, feel free to put suggestions and statements down below. Just keep them respectful. Thank you very much. And until next time, I appreciate watching. Happy modeling.